Previously on Spectacle Machine.
So far, this has been a great album. So I'm really curious to see if Act 2 is just as good as Act 1. It can only go from here, right? 23 tracks. 23 more to go. Alright, let's get started. Let's do this. Act 2, Track 1. What did I miss?
What did I miss? What did I miss?
Act 2 opens up with an excellent number in which we are introduced to Thomas Jefferson. I just love the introduction of Thomas Jefferson. I have no idea, but for some reason, this old-timey classic gospel style just suits his personality like super well. It's really weird, but the combination is just perfect. At the very beginning, I loved when the ensemble started descending chromatically. It sounded really cool.
Thomas Jefferson's coming home, Lord, he's been off in Paris for so long.
With all the different and interesting ideas that happen in this track, as well as a catchy chorus, this song gets a 10 out of 10. Track number 2, Cabinet Battle. In this track, we're introduced to the arguments for and against the National Bank. Hamilton is for the bank and Jefferson is opposed. I love how their debate is treated like a rap battle. It's super clever. I love it. All the heckling that happens during this track is much like it would have been in real life. Unlike today, in the colonial age of the United States, it was acceptable to heckle. So all the heckling that happens during the cabinet battle, it's realistic, which is cool. In fact, in the United Kingdom, it's still acceptable to heckle during debates. Despite the clever premise for this track, it falls short on its lackluster instrumental, but lyrically it still holds up. 8 out of 10. Track number 3, Take a Break.
Take a break. You know I have to get my plan through Congress.
In this track, Eliza and Angelica, and this time I remembered who's who. Eliza is married to Hamilton, Angelica is not, but she had a thing for him before. So Eliza and Angelica in this track convince Hamilton to take a break and relax. We are also introduced to an adolescent Philip, the son of Hamilton. In the very beginning of this track, Eliza and Philip are practicing piano, and the duel theme returns. Perhaps foreshadowing something in the future? I don't know, maybe, who knows? While I listened to young Philip, it sounded a bit silly. I was pretty sure that it was a grown man pretending to act like a child, and I just didn't like it.
Daddy, look, my name is Philip. I am a poet. I wrote this poem just to show it.
And at this point, I start to notice that Angelica doesn't necessarily have a theme, but she has a signature way of communicating. Angelica will often sing at one single note, just varying pitches here and there, and she'll be singing super fast, usually in 16th notes.
My dearest Alexander, you must get through to Jefferson. Sit down with him and compromise. Don't stop till you agree.
And I thought that was interesting. This might have been put there in order to evoke nervousness. And this lyric right here is so descriptive and poetic, and it just really struck a chord in me.
I noticed a comma in the middle of a phrase. It changed the meaning. Did you intend this? One stroke and you've consumed my waking days.
In this track, the orchestration masterfully manipulates itself in order to lend to the narrative in this track. 9 out of 10. Track number 4, Say No to This.
Lord, show me how to say no to this.
During this track, Hamilton ends up having an affair with a woman named Reynolds. I loved that cello ostinato at the beginning, so sinister and kind of funky. Again, this track oddly reminds me of Kirk Franklin, and I guess that makes sense, because at the beginning of the song, it's like a prayer to God to lead him away from temptation, so it makes sense that way. This chorus is hella catchy, and I'm so glad that they decided to stray away from those typical 4 chords that you see over and over again in standard pop songs. Midway through the track, Hamilton receives a letter from John Reynolds, Maria Reynolds' husband. In that letter, it is revealed that John Reynolds knew about the affair and blackmails Hamilton.
You see, that was my wife who you decided to.
This was a really good track. 10 out of 10. Track number 5, The Room Where It Happens.
No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened.
This track is mainly from the perspective of Aaron Burr. From what I gather, during this track, Hamilton manages to convince Madison Jefferson to put his debt plan onto the Congress floor. Aaron Burr is jealous because he lacks the personality to accomplish something like this. He usually just waits for opportunities and doesn't grab it. In this track, Burr also realizes that all he really wants is just to be in the room where it happens, just to hold power and to be somebody. I love the mix of electric and acoustic percussion, making for a very interesting atmosphere. I really love those horns, by the way. Fun horns, really good horns, love those horns. The chromatic sounds in those horns help build up the tension, especially with that single beat of silence. And then I started to notice that they were using banjo midway. That's awesome. That's such a great choice, and it really helps with that old Dixieland vibe that the chorus is trying to emulate. This is a really good track. 10 out of 10. Track number 6, Schuyler Defeated.
War hero Philip Schuyler loses Senate seat to young upstart Aaron Burr.
In this track, the Schuyler grandpa loses his seat in the Senate to Aaron Burr, perhaps to possibly oppose Hamilton. No one knows for sure. It's likely that he just wanted power and he did it the only way he knew he could. The return of the Schuyler motif is naturally placed in here.
Grandpa just lost his seat in the Senate.
Sometimes that's how it goes.
I love it when Burr says, "It goeth before the fall." Possibly foreshadowing something? I don't know, maybe, who knows? So this track isn't meant to hold up on its own. I realize that. This is what I mean by filler. When I say filler, I don't mean that the information in it isn't important. What I do mean is that this particular track isn't meant to be on its own. These filler tracks are actually just dialogue that occurs, and it's not treated as its own song. So for example, in opera, there are these things called recitatives. Recitatives are sung, and this acts as a dialogue in the opera. It's usually not very memorable, but the composer can manipulate this to make it interesting. In opera, there's also these things called arias. Arias are meant to stand on their own. So this particular track, Schuyler Defeated, kinda acts like recitative. Again, there's important information in here, and it's not meant to stand as its own thing. But the composer could have been more creative here. This is why this track gets an 8 out of 10. Track number 7, Cabinet Battle number 2.
The issue on the table. France is on the verge of war with England.
In this track, Hamilton and Jefferson debate about if the US should help France during their war with England. The instrumental here is weak here, just like the first debate. I like how Miranda just frames history out is in the specific track. Despite being the main character here, the lyrics aren't necessarily on his side. Both Jefferson and Hamilton make some excellent points, and arguments such as these are still happening in the United States to this day, which makes their whole debate very engaging. 8 out of 10. Track number 8, Washington on Your Side.
It must be nice to have Washington on your side.
In this track, Jefferson, Madison, and Burr sing about their shared beef with Hamilton. Again, I have to say that I absolutely love the variety that is in this musical. Constantly changing styles. I like how the singing parts are constantly shifting in and out of unison. They'll be singing together one part, and then they'll drift apart in a harmony, back together, and they'll be doing it like super fast. It's really cool. Also, the rapping ability in this track really shines in our performers here. The bridge is really cool and sounded like something out of Earthsuit. I know you've never heard of Earthsuit, but here's a track so you know what I'm talking about.
If Washington isn't gonna listen to disciplined dissidents, this is the difference. This kid is out. Oh, this immigrant isn't somebody we chose. Oh, this immigrant's keeping us all on our toes. Father, come and get us one time, one time. Father, come and get us. Father, come and get us one time, one time. Father, come and get us.
The lyrics in this track help clarify all the arguments that were made against Hamilton's National Bank. And honestly, a lot of the arguments make sense. It's really interesting that a good portion of Act 2 focuses on the arguments against Hamilton. I would imagine it was structured this way to really grasp the weight of all the odds that were against him. 9 out of 10. Track number 9, One Last Time. One last time, we're gonna celebrate. Oh yeah, alright. Wrong track, sorry. In this track, Washington reveals to Hamilton his plans to step down from the presidency. The simple piano riff at the beginning is effective and very pleasing to the ears.
Mr. President, you asked to see me. I know you're busy.
The chorus is musically clever. It's pretty poppy, but it has unpredictable qualities here to keep it engaging.
Let's take a break tonight, and then we'll teach him how to say goodbye. To say goodbye, you and I. No.
Washington's decision was very important. He could have easily held on to his power, but he let go of it, which is commendable. The strings also bring back the theme of Story of Tonight.
I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will view them with indulgence, and that after 4...
They don't just bring it back just because the Story of Tonight is a celebration theme. And in this track, we're celebrating Washington's legacy. This was a very bittersweet track. I really loved it. I love the adaptation of Washington's actual farewell address. It masterfully captures the emotion as well as the rhythm of the actual address.
I anticipate with pleasing expectation that retreat in which I promise myself to realize the sweet enjoyment of partaking in the midst of my fellow citizens.
10 out of 10. Track number 10. I Know Him. John Adams. I know him. This track is another King George reprise, in which he mocks the election of John Adams. It's pretty much the same song from the very first time, and at this point it's almost lost its charm. But not completely. It's almost hard to ruin this song. It's a really good song. The reprise does add different things to make it more appealing, like the word painting on the word small.
Next to Washington, they all look small, all alone.
And I love that deceptive cadence at the very end. It was enjoyable, but overall I feel like this reprise could have been a little more creative. 7 out of 10. Track number 11, The Adams Administration.
Sit down, John, you fat mother...
This number describes the effects of the Adams administration, such as the firing of Hamilton. In this short piece, we return to the original Alexander theme to narrate the story. Now at this point, it really feels like Sweeney Todd. In the Sweeney Todd, characters would often return to the main theme to break the fourth wall and begin narrating to the audience. Now this is a very short number, less than a minute long, but even though we've heard this material before, it manages to keep it interesting with the brand new instrumentation. It masterfully communicates everything we need to know while keeping it musically interesting in just under a minute. 10 out of 10. Track number 12, We Know. During this number, Jefferson, Madison, and Burr discover that Hamilton had an affair with Maria Reynolds. Uh-oh. Oh no. At the very beginning, I love how the instruments keep layering on top of each other, but they don't do this just for fun. All of the piling of instruments are done to evoke all of the accusations that keep piling up on Hamilton. And Miranda's rap skills really shine here. I was really impressed. This act just keeps getting better and better. I had a really difficult time finding anything wrong with this track. 10 out of 10. Track number 13, Hurricane.
In the eye of a hurricane there is quiet.
In this track, we take a peek into Hamilton's mind and how he decides to solve this issue. The musical structure in this piece is weak, but the orchestration lifts it up in the heights. You get it? In the heights? Like the other Lin-Manuel Miranda musical that I saw live? But that one's not very good. Anyways, now let me explain what I mean here when I say that the structure is weak but the orchestration lifts it up. Okay, so if I isolated the melody and the chords, this is what it would sound like. It's pretty boring, and it doesn't sound interesting. But now let's take this song by the Beatles and do the exact same thing. song by the Beatles still holds up, even without all the other instruments playing. So about 3/4 of the way into this track, the riff from Yorktown returns.
I wrote my way out of hell. I wrote my way to revolution. I was louder than the crack in the bell. I wrote Eliza.
It's an awesome riff, by the way. I love this riff. But why does it return? It doesn't make sense thematically. During this part, Hamilton is rapping about how he wrote himself out of a lot of situations. So I fail to see the connection between this idea and the Battle of Yorktown. Now it could be argued here that the Yorktown theme returns here because this is Hamilton's new battle. But if that's the case, why not use this theme more often? Like in the cabinet battles. That would have brought the cabinet battles up to incredible heights. But like I've said before, Miranda is excellent at writing lyrics. Lyrics like these are heartbreaking.
When I was 17, a hurricane destroyed my town. I didn't drown. I couldn't seem to die.
Anyways, I know I've criticized this track a lot, but I did really like this track a lot. There is just a lot to dissect here. Ultimately, the beautiful orchestration and the gut-wrenching lyrics bring it all the way up to an 8 out of 10. Track number 14, the Reynolds pamphlet.
The Reynolds pamphlet.
In this track, Hamilton publishes a pamphlet in which he admits to his affair with Maria Reynolds before rumors can get out. This track had so many things going on. It was so hard to keep up. It left me overwhelmed, much like Hamilton is feeling during this scene.
You can never be satisfied. God, I hope you're satisfied.
This is a very sinister sounding arrangement. Interesting choices were made. The bass notes in the piano mixed with the synth sounds create this very unique sound. I really loved it. When the piece shifts to the conversation between Angelica and Hamilton, it shifts to just strings and piano to focus on the intimacy of the conversation. All these constant changes kept it interesting throughout. I loved this track, and I was absolutely blown away. 10 out of 10. Track number 15, Burn. This serves as Eliza's reaction to Hamilton's affair. First of all, I love the sneaky transition of that harp's triplet notes from Reynolds' pamphlet.
Have you read this? You ever see somebody on their own life?
Oh. The change-up of the time signature at the beginning is really nice. Now, the chorus of the song is just one word, but it's super effective. With just one long note, the chords underneath it change its quality. This performance was so emotional, I got chills.
Only reading the letters you wrote me. I'm searching and scanning for answers in every line.
Again, the structure for the verses here is weak, but the orchestration, chorus, and emotional performance bring it up all the way to a 9 out of 10. Track number 16, Blow Us All Away.
Blow us all away.
This track takes us about 10 years into the future. Philip is now 19 years old. The duel theme returns once more when Philip challenges George Ecker after Ecker insults Papa Hamilton.
Blow us all away.
As Philip prepares, the sweet sound of strings go against the dissonance of the flutes. Sounded really nice.
Mr. Eaker, how was the rest of your show?
I'd rather skip the pleasantries. Let's go.
10 out of 10. Track number 17, Stay Alive, reprise.
Stay alive.
In this track, Philip dies from his wound that he received during his duel. After the familiar Stay Alive, it goes into this beautiful and gut-wrenching piano ostinato.
I did exactly as you said, Pop. I held my head up.
As Philip is dying, his mother sings with him the duel theme.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
She said we know.
Good.
Now, I thought this decision was very odd. Earlier when we heard the duel theme, it made sense because it was foreshadowing his ultimate demise. But it doesn't make sense here. At the end of the Broadway production of Beauty and the Beast, Belle reprises her song Home.
We are home. We where we shall be forever.
Now, this isn't necessarily associated with the relationship between Belle and the Beast, but it is associated with her longing to belong, which she found in the Beast. The fact that Eliza is singing the duel theme to her child as he's dying in her arms is as if Belle was singing to the Beast. Da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na. But despite this odd choice at the very end of this track, I did enjoy it for the rest of this track. It was simple and not melodramatic. It was extremely effective in that sense. 8 out of 10. Track number 18, it's Quiet Uptown. In this track, Hamilton and Eliza reconcile as husband and wife as they mourn the loss of their child. The weak melodic and harmonic structure is exposed at the very beginning, but it is improved upon as we progress through with the orchestration. It's a great arrangement, by the way. I like how that would be enough returns here with those tonal dissonances, evoking the pain of their loss.
I know I don't deserve you, Eliza, but hear me out, that would be enough.
The lyrics here are a bit of a letdown, especially towards the end.
Forgiveness. Can you imagine?
And it's just too simple. Despite this, the performers are giving a very emotional performance, and I really felt for these characters. 7 out of 10. Track number 19, the election of 1800.
Can we get back to politics?
Please?
Yo.
In this track, Jefferson runs against Burr for president. Jefferson asks Hamilton to support his campaign. Hamilton does back him up, and that possibly cost Burr the election. Jefferson wins, and for the first time in history, a new political power obtained power without violence. Pretty big deal. The lyrics effectively depict this, and the music is practically a reprise of Washington on Your Side. Despite this, it does do a few interesting things, like the musical tension building up to Hamilton's answer on who he supports.
If you had to choose, if you had to choose.
It's a tie.
If you had to choose, if you had to choose.
It's up to the delegates.
If you had to choose, if you had to choose.
It's up to Hamilton.
If you had to choose, Jefferson or Burr. Yeah.
It's overall a really good track. This track could have done a little bit more musically though, so I'm going to have to give it a 9 out of 10. Track number 20, Your Obedient Servant.
I have the honor to be your obedient servant, A. Ham.
In this track, we transition into the thoughts of both Hamilton and Burr. After an exchange of sick burns sent through letters, Burr challenges Hamilton to a duel. Man, both Hamilton and Burr had some pretty sick burns, by the way. I love how whenever they would sign their names, they would go right into this piece of music with classical sensibilities, clearly poking fun at the customs of this time. The orchestration is so cool here. It was really hard to pick out anything I didn't like about this track. It was very enjoyable. 10 out of 10. Track number 21, Best of Wives and Best of Women. In this short track, Hamilton practically lies to Eliza in order to go meet Burr for the duel. Even though this isn't meant to stand on its own, I really enjoyed the light meshing of familiar themes like Quiet Uptown and Be Enough. Perhaps it's because his life is already flashing before his eyes. 9 out of 10. Track 22, The World Was Wide Enough. This is the Duel of the Fates. Sorry, I know it's about to get sad up in here, but I just couldn't help one more joke. This track has some gorgeous harmonies, sung by the chorus. Really beautiful stuff there.
Most disputes die and no one shoots. Number 4.
Both performers really shine here in their acting. You can just hear their desperation. It is absolutely gut-wrenching. I love the pseudo-rap monologue that Hamilton gives right before he is shot to death. Time slows down. No instruments, no backing vocals. It's just Hamilton isolated for about a minute and a half.
What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. I wrote some notes at the beginning of a song someone will sing for me. America, you great unfinished symphony you sent for me.
It reminds me of Act 2, Scene 3 in the opera Peter Grimes.
Come on, lend me, turn the skies back.
After Hamilton is shot, the chord progression returns from running out of time, because Hamilton ran out of time.
I strike him right between his ribs.
I like how we immediately get to witness his death through Burr's perspective instead of Eliza's. It helps piece together where we began. Now, I don't like how the track ends with basic chords and a basic melody. Perhaps the chords could have been transformed here, or maybe at the very end, like the last few measures. Burr's vocals could have been isolated here in order to really focus on his solitude and his misery. Despite this, this was a great track overall. 9 out of 10. Track number 23. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
The finale of this musical concludes the life of Alexander Hamilton and how he was remembered by his friends, family, colleagues, and country. It starts off with a gorgeous first measure. But then the beginning of the track goes really dry, and it's too much like a standard pop song. But later again, it is improved by the wonderful orchestration and beautiful lyrics. When we get to Eliza's solo, at times it feels like the melody is too stagnant, and at times too many syllables are attempted to fit within a few beats, making it sound too conversational.
She is buried in Trinity Church near you. When I needed her most, she was right on time.
Despite this measure that keeps repeating throughout this track is enough to bring up this track a few points.
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
That measure alone is so beautiful. When we get to the reveal that Eliza established an orphanage and that she sees Hamilton in the children, it got me so emotional. Not only that, but the melody really improved here. Now, I expect this musical to end with a big bang, like a return from My Shot or Alexander Hamilton. But I agree 100% with their decision to end it on a slow, emotional track. It was a very brave decision, and I commend them. I was so impressed with that decision. This was a near perfect ending. 8 out of 10. Hamilton is a very, very long album. Right now I'm looking at how many minutes I'm having to deal with to like cut and stuff, and it's like about 44 minutes. Your average album is about 45 minutes to an hour long, and your average musical cast recording is about an hour long, maybe an hour and 30 minutes. But the 2015 Broadway cast recording of Hamilton has 2 hours and 22 minutes worth of musical material with 46 tracks in total. That's a lot of music. So it's amazing to me that even with that much music, I still managed to find enjoyment out of every single track. Some are way better than others, of course. By the way, as I was looking back at my first part of this review, I realized that my opinions didn't really match up with the score I gave each track. So here are the new scores. So this means that a whopping 17 out of 46 tracks were a 10 out of 10. That's a little over 1/4 of the album that had perfect tracks. That's insane. And you know, it kind of reminds me of America right now, and how 1/4 of the entire COVID population of the world is in the United States. But anyways, in conclusion, Hamilton is an excellent listen, filled with a variety of styles, each of them composed masterfully. It is occasionally dragged down by uninspired melodies and predictable chord progressions, but more than half of the time, it manages to be musically unpredictable and tells its story masterfully, with its clever and descriptive lyrics and wonderful performances. So, when we take the score of all 46 tracks and we put them through the machine, we find that the original Broadway cast recording of Hamilton gets an 8 out of 10. Well, do you agree with my score? Let me know in the comments. Let's have a friendly discussion. And be sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more track-by-track reviews like this one. I review all sorts of music. And who knows, maybe you'll discover some new music along with me. See you next time in the machine.